figuring out the way ahead, or let's say the road ahead. A highly relevant topic for any professional student. The topic is critical thinking. So let's begin with the story. Story baby, a little bit before your era, Nokia. Failure to connect. Yes, this used to be the out and out most popular mobile phone company in the world in the latter part of 90s, and especially in the early first decade of the 2000s. Before the arrival of Apple, Nokia was the king. But then what happened? They came up with the finest of mobile phones ever, 110, still you may see, right? And then the fall, losing it all by 2013. It had so much of innovation, a lot of variety, great phones and global recognition. But the phones like 6600 and other versions also, right? They were ahead of the rest, but then they lost it all. Nokia had the core values: respect, challenge, achievement, and renewal. The problem was the failure to follow those core values. When Apple came up in the middle part of 2000s, Nokia found itself far behind Apple in many aspects. The reasons, they were into production of volumes and capturing the markets, but the managers are more into managing and the marketing rather than improving innovation. Vision was missing. So Apple could come from behind as a newcomer and beat Nokia. Nokia tried to come back up. They came up with a couple of iPhone killers, oddly named, oddly branded, in that they were good phones but nowhere as good as Apple in capturing the market. Downfall is rapid in the technology industry. You have it, you are there. You don't have it, you miss out in a huge way. Company was more into management, more into making money, more into making volumes, less into innovation. Their system Symbian, right, was way below the standard of Nokia's iOS. Apple's iOS system, and later came the Android systems. Symbian was way ahead initially. They were there long before the other operating systems, but the thing was, it was never developed further. In the technical competence, managers were missing. They were not engineers. Apple, everybody was an engineer in the management. So we had a high technology company where managers are more into technically increasing the products, increasing the profits, increasing the cash flows. They spent little time in the labs in innovation. Result, just Nokia failed to plan the future. With all its headway, a decade of advantages and a global branding, with millions of people having enormous respect for Nokia for its high quality and the longevity of the products, just lost it all away because they just couldn't come up with solutions for the next generation or the next level. They were too arrogant, too stubborn, too self-focused on its own values rather than identifying the market needs and coming up with solutions. So today Nokia is a case study of what not to do. Yes, Nokia learned the lessons the hard way, no questions about it. Today Nokia functions, no questions, but Nokia doesn't make phones. Nokia actually purchases phones from somebody else. We discuss that later. It's into high-end communication, Nokia as a company today. In a world dominated by digital transformation, yes, you just cannot have the old mindset. What's the meaning of old mindset? Just yesterday's knowledge. It would not do for tomorrow's actions. Oh, the day after's applications. Companies need to improve on, companies need to change. Companies changing, companies improving means the people inside the company. So the diversification, or rather having more diverse thinking, continuous innovation is a game. You can't avoid it. Today, Nokia phones are made by this HMD. Actually, it's a company made out of former Nokia employees. And they make phones, and they sell them under the Nokia brand name, although they do not own the Nokia name, which has been owned by some other company. HMD is a manufacturer of Nokia. So Nokia has certain kind of market presence, but nowhere near what it used to be. When you lose in a highly demanding, highly competitive, place or in a field, it's very difficult for you to catch up. So the need to critically think about what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, they play a huge role in determining our future. Yeah, it's part of work and life. Now think of an ambulance crew coming to the road to save, an injured passenger or injured motorcyclist. They have just seconds or maybe a minute or two to determine what actions should be taken. Their failure to analyze the threat or the danger to the victim may result in the victim getting into far worse trouble than even the accident. Right? So that's the thing. Imagine a crew on board a plane with so much of avionics and the dials and the indicators and all those signals coming their way. Those two people, the head pilot and the co, have to make so much of decisions in a three-dimensional thinking pattern. No matter how good these fly-by-wire systems are, they are as good as the people who operate them. Their carelessness or their lack of focus, their failure to critically think about things could bend a plane. And airline accidents are not that uncommon, right? See what happened to Boeing 737. Imagine something as mundane as running a restaurant. It's not an easy thing to serve food to many customers with every one of them, being okay with the food and not feeling sick or not making complaints about the quality of the food. It's not an easy thing to satisfy a customer with the food. Restaurant has to plan a lot of things, from where they get the goods, who's going to do the cooking, what about the packaging, what about the ingredients added, what about the mix, so many things to think about. Yeah, lots of words of business came from military. In fact, this has been, probably the world's oldest stuff, the influential actions, influential professions. And the terminology used in military thinking has come into other parts of business too. Critical thinking was one of them. Imagine a group of soldiers in a mission. How many things do they need to consider and take into account in order to achieve success, and yes, definitely in order to not to get killed? So it's part of life. It's something that we cannot avoid. Think of IT, information technology. Imagine the challenges you would be facing when you set up a system. Think of the programming errors, syntax errors, a tiny error like the print being misprinted as pint is enough, or not having a bracket, right, where there should be one, could cause an error like that, and it might affect the entire program. Logic errors are there. Again, the typo errors, missing brackets, infinite looping, right? They say the hardest to crack down. Runtime errors. the code issues. These are little things, and yes, the end user may be the victim of it, but these little things can easily happen if we do not make up a proper understanding and analysis of what we have been doing. You cannot be careless. A tiny error could knock it off. Compilation errors, language related issues. So when you let the system be used in a different computer, well, that computer should be ready to take in the program. So the quality issues with regard to the software available in the computer may have an impact. Arithmetic errors, a very, very common thing. Think of dividing something by 0, which could result in logic errors, resource errors. Computer is not an unlimited pool of resources. It has its limitations. So the system that you run in the computer should be able to feed from the resources available. So if any mismatch is there, it could affect. Interface errors. Think of that. So these are very common type of challenges in IT. Anyone could be facing them. Anyone could be a victim of this. Any system could be hurt by this. Any program could be affected by this, and the stories are so common, right? Sometimes the key companies like Samsung or Apple, for that matter, right? There's no company that was able to have a clean record of its own IT. There were always issues. So how would you handle the challenge? Software engineering is hard, no question. It's fuzzy. The requirements, fuzzy means requirements keep on changing from person to person. No oddity, right? Programming errors are very inevitable. How do you zero these errors? That's where the critical reasoning comes to help. How do we do that? Yes. Identify the problem. For us to identify the problem, we should be looking for a problem. We should not be making something and being too overconfident that we did it right. We got to collect data. Just we call it triangulating. Just collecting data from one source may not give the correct picture. We need to have the analytical ability, so that might require data from multiple sources. That means you, someone else, some other systems, right? So you can't just rush into decision making. You need to analyze these things. And yes, no matter how good we are as good as how careful we are. Good and careful don't come together. It's better to take others' opinions. And always be looking for solutions to the maximum. You may have a solution, but there could be a solution better than that. So that attitude of being better might help us to minimize, zero the errors. And yes, nothing in the industry is possible just alone. You need to work with others. What little they know might make you be better. Yeah, this is what we have to do. Observation, analytical thinking, open-mindedness, problem solving, communication. So it's a process of things, right? And when you do that, these are technically key steps on the way from the maker to the customer. right? All this happens inside the lab, inside the processing zone, inside the organization. Different people will be doing it, or sometimes one person has to focus on all of it, right? So it's not an easy challenge, but it's a challenge that you cannot avoid. So what is it, critical thinking? Take a look, please. Yes, it helps us to make correct decisions. Correct decisions are, yes, strong decisions. We can't avoid taking big choices, big decisions. And critical thinking might help us to make them better, make them safer, the decisions. Better communication will help me to obtain better information. Not just from myself, we call it triangulating, right? Taking from others also. Maybe online, maybe other people. So that may give better options and the better decision making ability. The process is this, observe, analyze, infer, communicate, problem solving. So it's very similar to what we learned earlier. Another way, which is in here, always be on the watch for issues. Never be overly confident about what you have done, irrespective of your capacities. Your capacity or the ability, they are only as good as the work already done. But work to be done might require better you. Yes, collect, understand, interpret information. That's analysis. And do not make own conclusions too fast. That's inference. Get others' opinions. Be a very good communicator. You could be non-verbal, you could be in writing, you could be verbal. But the healthier communication with the team, right? It could be intra or it could be even extra, might help you be a person better at what you're doing tomorrow and even better the day after. Yes, anything that we do requires troubleshooting. We cannot be a troubleshooter unless we bother to look for trouble, look for issues. Look for trouble does not mean getting trouble, but looking at situations where there could be problems. How do you do that? Asking questions. Simple ones. You've done it, okay, you've done the design, you've done the hardware, you've done the network, you've done the software thing. Alright, now ask the simple questions like these. How, what, why, who? Simple things. As many as possible, so that you can come up with the system which is, free of issues. Overconfidence, or rather overly careless, or being overly busy with work might result in us asking fewer questions when we should be asking all these. So the aftermath of a product being made, or while the product is being done, we need to be doing this continuous checking and rechecking by asking the questions ourselves about what we are doing. There we might find solutions, we might find problems and solutions to that. At work, how do we do that? Workplace is something where there's a team working. You have colleagues, you have the teams. So identify the problem areas. You may not have to do it alone. You can support others doing it. Or you may do it alone yourself. But there's a team option there, right? And start small. If you find out the problem, okay, you can analyze the problem and start somewhere where the solutions are easier before you go for the complex solutions. Complex part of the problem, right? Act before the problem hits, true. So we have to be continuously looking at the internal systems and the processes and the procedures, right, to identify what can cause problems before the problem came up. And yes, it takes time finding solutions. So how do you find time? A team that is hurried and into too much of burial with work might not have time to correct themselves. So the planners, the company, right, the teams, even you yourself should find time to, think clearly without letting your mind be disturbed by other things. Benefits are plenty. Good critical thinking will help improve decision making. Yes, it helps better problem solving. Definitely the research skills, because critical thinking is all about questioning yourself, right? That's research. And true, creativity would be improved when you find that what you've done is, pretty much of a solid product, solid, gadget, right? So it could only push you to be better at the next product. Yes, critical thinking makes you ask a lot of questions. So that means you can stay curious. Now bear in mind, we can't be the master thinker right away. It takes time. It will take years. But you have to begin somewhere. When we are at the student level, yes, unreflective thinker, right? You just someone who don't bother about things, but then you'll be moving on. Challenge thinker, beginning thinker, practicing thinker, advanced thinker, master thinker. Challenge thinker means somebody else forces you to think, like teachers, like parents, like your first time, the employers. But then yes, you start thinking yourself. You start putting as part of your life, and yes, advance it to mastery. Critical thinking looks easy, but it has some steps, right, which are not exactly that easy. Clarify, question, identify, analyze, evaluate, create. So another approach to critical thinking. Identify what the issue is and keep asking questions, right? Identify, what to do, and analyze whether the answer is a good one. Evaluate, did you write it, did you do it correctly? Or then make up another solution. That's what critical thinking is all about. Imagine your exam result. Why did I get this result? Identify the solutions for the next paper. Analyze whether it's the right solution. And then do the next paper, right? Figure out whether your solution matched. If not, try to come up with a new solution. Simply, it's about asking questions. Communication is the key for that, right? Gathering relevant information. You must get it. Can you remember the triangulation? Get information from everywhere, not just your information that is in front of you. Get info from everywhere. Think outside the box. Okay, there's a set solution. There's a specific solution for this particular problem that you or others have done. You can think different. See whether there's a different approach possible. Always, it's better to be so, right? And then, what are the other alternatives I have? I have a solution now, but can I do it in a different way? Solution is that. So, with that, we finish up on the topic of critical thinking, the road ahead.